Did you enjoy the previous video of Mono Green Storm, where we did some gold fishing and tuning first before the league? Good news, we're going to try that again today. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video, and today we're going to be playing Burn. Now, story time for a minute here. Burn actually is, according to a very narrow sample from MTG Goldfish data, a top 20 deck in Legacy right now. And I mean that in terms of play rate, not win rate. So people are testing Burn again right now. But spoilers, it is not going well. And when you look at the results that Burn is having, it is going very poorly. And you're not seeing top 8 results with Burn or anything like that. You're seeing them, squeak into the top 32 or bubble outside of the top 8 in smaller events. So Scott submitted to me a Burn deck that they have fully foiled out in paper, which, kudos, I respect the bling. And Scott submitted this with tuning with the hopes that I could get it to a more playable spot. And Hexing Squelcher, in theory, is a relatively attractive card for a burn deck. Making your burn spells uncounterable is pretty good, and something that Scott was already aiming for in deck design very clearly. And being able to have the ward of pay 2 life on your aggressive creatures also sounds pretty good. Now, I am going to goldfish 2 different decks today and see which I like the feel of better. And the first is going to be Scott's version, which I have only changed a single card in the main deck as of right now. We will tune sideboards before the league actually starts. But the other one is an edited version of a deck that was played by Crucible of Words to a 5-0 finish. And again, don't sweat sideboards. I will tune those before the league actually starts. So Crucible of Words played a deck with a bunch of very aggressive goblins that you normally might not see in Legacy in the hopes of making Goblin Grenade into a playable card. Generally speaking, 3 points of damage is the minimum that you want a card to do when you are playing a burn deck. And when they do 4, 5, or more, you are relatively happy with them. So Goblin Grenade at 5 damage for a single mana is a lot. And one of the other things that this deck was trying to take advantage of was Monstrous Rage, where this is effectively a spell that does 3 damage immediately, but for every other attack that creature gets in, you get 1 more damage each turn beyond that. So in some cases, your Monstrous Rage might be something like 5 damage. And due to the trample here, you might actually be getting in for a few points of damage that you otherwise could not accomplish. And Hexing Squelcher sounds very good in a deck like this one. If you have a bunch of aggressive 1-drops, which maybe end up with a monstrous roll token on them and potentially threaten to Goblin Grenade later on, Hexing Squelcher giving those ward of 2 life is a big deal. This is also going to shut off counterspells on some of your potential game-winning haymakers towards the end, and making it so that your Goblin Grenade, which could be risky when you sacrifice a goblin and then use this spell as well, if your opponent counters that with a Spell Pierce or whatever, you're down 2 cards, forcing those cards to resolve can be a really big deal. And my version here is essentially a slightly lower to the ground version than what Crucible of Words played previously. So we are going to take a few minutes. We're going to goldfish both of these and see how they compare. And then whichever one of these I feel like is more viable, and I think the emphasis here is going to be on more viable, because we live in a format where Barrogoyf is one of the most played creatures in the format. And spoilers, that stacks up very well versus a burn deck. So we're going to just try to see what we can do to make burn playable. And we're just going to take 2 wildly different approaches of spells at face versus lots of creatures. And we're going to see what feels good. So that I don't have to interrupt the league later, let me shout out both of my sponsors here. If you need any cards, such as some of these strange goblins, please consider picking them up from my sponsor, TOAmagic.com. They're awesome. I like their work a lot. You always get free shipping, good customer service, and promo code ThrabenU will save you a little bit on your order. And should you need to find any of my deck lists, please check out moxfield.com. It is a fantastic website. I will put the final versions of both of these lists up on Moxfield so you can check them out and decide whether or not you want to try and burn people. All right, let's battle. All right, so we're going to start with the spell heavy one, and I'm just going to track number of mulligans and turn on which we goldfish. This first one absolutely has to be a mulligan. The second one only has a single land. I have 3, 6, 9, 12. I would probably keep this, and for the sake of math, let's assume the price of progress is 4 damage when we play it. A lot of variables on price of progress. So turn 1, lightning bolt for 3. Turn 2, let's double suspend some rift bolts. On turn 3, that's 3 damage, 6 damage, 9, 12. So instead, we can Swift Spear plus Bolt Wave. So we're over the halfway point on this turn. Is this promoting lethal here? So this is turn 4, and I would be short of lethal. We would have lethal on turn 5. That does not spark confidence. We did mulligan, though. Let's try again. Okay, opening hand has 9 points of damage and does not go anywhere. This will be a mulligan again. The second one seems fine. We'll keep that and pitch a Fire Blast. So on turn 1, we can Goblin Guide. And this is awkward here because in a goldfishing mode, this is going to feed us lands. That is what it is. So turn 2, I go Swift Spear and do one of these spells. I go to Punchies. I Punchies in for 4, opponent to 11. So I could then Bolt Wave. Opponent lost life. Oh, well, it's not going to let me do that way. I am not the opponent here, technically. So if I cast Skewer, I'm at 8. 6 plus 3 plus 4 plus another from Prowess. This one goldfishes on turn 3. That is totally reasonable. And Goblin Guide didn't feed us any extra lands, so that didn't skew that. This hand looks like it would be totally keepable. We go turn 1, Swift Spear, attack for 1. Let's say that I do the Rift Bolt here, and a Chain Lightning. That would be 16. Attack to 14. Rift Bolt to 11. Play land, and this looks like it is going to be lethal. So that, plus this would be another 3 to 5, plus another 5 to dead, plus Fire Blast left over. So that is another turn 3 goldfish. I think that was no mulligan this time. All right, opening hand has a lot of gas. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, plus Goblin Guide. I would keep that all day. I would like to hit the next land drop, though. It helps me deploy this a lot easier. I would not get it. So in this case, I'd probably attack with Goblin Guide. I'm going to pretend that I don't have that land until my next turn. And I would use one of these spells at face. On turn 3, I could have 8 damage. So this is going to be a turn 4 goldfish, which is fine. Let's do one more here. And this looks totally fine. So I would keep this and probably just rely on ye old Goblin Guides here. So on the next turn, I would guide into guide, be attacking for 6. Again, the Goblin Guide skewing things here a little bit, but this would be something like this. Into Bolt Wave. This would be attacking for 8. Then I've already done this, so I could skewer to make that 9, 10, 11, and 12. That would be another turn 3 goldfish. So, I mean, obviously, this is goldfishing. There's no interaction here, but this is looking reasonable. So now let's compare this to some goldfish hands from the Goblin version and see how that feels. Okay, this seems totally fine. I would do this and play one of these goblins. So this is worth 2 on an attack. This is worth 2 on an attack. Let's not overthink which one I play then. So then on turn 2, I would just play another creature, Monstrous Rage, one of these. This is sending in for 5 all by itself here. So then this is turn 3. Things are a touch awkward here, and like there's some question of how many lands does my opponent have. But let's say that I do something like this. This is swinging in for 7 initial plus an 8th damage. That's 7. And when we go to our next turn, there's 5 on board plus 4 spells in hand still. So this did not mulligan. Killed on turn 4 with gas left over. I am happy with that initial Goldfishing. Let's do some more. Oh yeah, I'm totally happy with this. So this can be a turn 1 Goblin Guide for 2 points of damage. On turn 2, let's imagine that I play out both of these. Send in for 2 points of damage. And then on turn 3, I Squelch, which is sending in for a good amount of damage. So that's 10. Then I Goblin Grenade, base, sacrificing one of these. Let's say this one. That's 5. I Fire Blast my opponent to 1, and my creatures cannot be removed from there. I think that is probably effectively a turn 3 win with a second Hexing Squelcher left over. I feel comfortable calling that a turn 3, at least as far as Mr. Goldfish is concerned. The Goblin Grenade being 5 damage for 1 mana that Hexing Squelcher can protect is kind of sick. Yeah, this is totally fine. This Goblin Guide would do absolutely disgusting things. So we're assuming no interaction here, so we just do this. We do that. We're really at 1 higher life due to this land. That's just something we'll keep in mind here. So this is an attack for 3, which is really 8. 5 plus 3 is 8. This is a turn 3 Goldfish. Did not have to mulligan. Still have a ton of gas left over. I think that's a difference between these two decks. It feels like the spell-based burn deck gets to the total faster, but is often doing so in a way where if interaction happens, you're not going to be as happy. So I would keep this despite the single land here. We go Goblin Guide. We start attacking for 2. Oh, that's a revealed mountain. So let's not use that this turn. Let's just say that I play another Goblin Guide this turn, and then I can use this mountain the following turn. On turn 2, I get 4 damage in. On turn 3, I attack for 4. If I feel like my opponent is not on counterspells, I have lethal here. Otherwise, I set up Hexing Squelcher and then have lethal the following turn very easily. I think I will call that a turn 3 for the Goldfish, although it might actually be turn 4 in practice. Okay, this is the first time that I've had to mulligan with this deck. This is slightly awkward. After a mulligan, I would probably keep it and just hope to draw a goblin to make Goblin Grenade do its thing. This is a turn 1 where I do nothing. A turn 2 where I drop a persistent source of damage over time. Second Goblin Grenade is awkward here. This feels like a game that I would probably just lose to a lot of decks. Let's assume the Eidolon progression happens at about the rate that I do spells. Kind of hard to physically Goldfish this hand, but this probably ends up being about a turn 4. Definitely a lot of how many spells is my opponent casting here. Let's do one more, since that one maybe just loses to itself. That hand probably does a lot of damage over time. Yeah, I would keep this. I'd like to see something like a Goblin Grenade to make it better. And here I might just do this so both of these creatures can be attacking on turn 2. So do this, get in for 4 points of damage, and then Squelcher would come down and protect these. I would mobilize. So that's an opponent to 10 with a lightning bolt on face, bringing them to 7. So this is going to be a turn 4 goldfish. I'm ending up with these leftover cards, which I like. One final one here. This is fine. So let's say that I play one of these out on turn 1. I would have Goblin Guided there. The opponent ends up taking a total of 4, is at 16. I really would need the next land drop. So this would be 16 to 14 on attack, with 2 Goblin Grenades representing lethal next turn. This is reasonable. Let's go ahead and call the Goldfishing stage done here. I've had an idea that's either really stupid or really good. Is Amped Raptor good here? Like, is the value that you generate from Amped Raptor by playing it and getting a lightning bolt off of it, or even better, playing it and getting one of these cards off of it, so strong that it is worth doing something like this? So, like, we play a playset of Amped Raptor, we go down a couple of the cards that look like this, and we have a way of generating some extra value, which is something that we don't often see from Burn. I'm willing to spend a few more minutes goldfishing to see how this feels. Because, like, it's clearly anti-synergy with something that looks like this, but, like, how much value is this in actuality? And let's just assume that we play the Amped Raptor prior to the Eidolon here. So on turn 2, I do this. So for 2 mana, I generate 4 power. And assuming that that gets that amount of damage, that's pretty real. And then what my opponent is doing dictates here. So I attack for 6 and put them to 10. Lightning Bolt for 3, putting them to 7. And play one of these spells, depending on what exactly I am expecting. And if the game were to go on even longer, I also have this as some looting. That feels solid. This would be a mulligan just for not having any lands. This would be totally fine and keepable and would probably goldfish quite well. I am specifically looking for Amped Raptor hands, though, because we've already goldfished this deck a handful of times, and we now have a specific thing that we want to check. I'm going to keep this, and if we miss on the land drops, I will just go to another hand, because I specifically want to see what these Amped Raptors are doing. Okay, so I found a 6-card hand that has an Amped Raptor. This is not ideal because it doesn't have a 1-drop, but I just want to see what it is like when I spin the wheels. So that into Chain Lightning on a mediocre hand has my opponent at 14 on turn 2, and then on turn 3, I would probably play a Squelcher to make this more awkward to deal with. Monstrous Rage it. Hit opponent for 5. They are at 9. And then I get to do this really cool thing where I play a Hexing Squelcher to protect the Hexing Squelcher. And then when I sacrifice a Hexing Squelcher to fuel the Goblin Grenade, I still have another Squelcher in play for the uncounterable thing. I think there's something to Amped Raptor, but I think if I'm gonna do this super heavy creature build, I need a couple more spells that look like Searing Blaze to get creatures out of the way. And a bunch of the, like, Bolt Wave type cards don't do it. Is this where we go to Rift Bolt? This might be where we go to Rift Bolt and play a couple of Rift Bolts. It gives me Rift Bolt, Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt as things that go directly to face in game 1. Monstrous Rage kind of goes at face if you squint at it funny. I think I'm willing to play a league with this now. What I am noticing about this is that this can count to 20 with fewer cards than this can. This is gonna goldfish faster. I think this is going to play games more reliably. And we died a Barrowglyph, and I think I just kind of have to accept that. So let's build a sideboard. I am totally on board with a bunch of copies of Searing Blaze. I don't have Graveyard Hate in this, and this is also 17 cards. Having both Roiling Vortex and Eidolon is pretty good coverage for Storm. Are artifact decks even that good right now? Maybe I could skimp on these. Maybe I don't need to play this many of this effect. These are kind of bad with Amped Raptor. So do Price of Progress for the things that go long. Skimp on these effects. I could also do something like Bam 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 and play a playset of Leyline of the Void, which also is coverage versus some combo matchups. Emphasis on some. I don't think this is crazy as far as the sideboard is concerned. I don't know whether or not I'm getting lost in the sauce with the bonus creatures here. Like, this is sleek, efficient, get you dead, but I don't know how this holds up in the, like, Daze, Thoughtseize, highly interactive world. I'm gonna gamble my play points here, Scott, and we'll see whether or not I've made a better or worse burn deck. Let's battle. I'm a liar. Amped Raptor can't hit Rift Bolt. We need to find something else for that slot. I think I'm gonna very reluctantly put 2 Searing Blaze into the main. This is 3 damage in theory while also removing a creature. This seems like the sort of thing that I want this deck to be doing. Maybe it's not the best at 18 lands. Maybe I have to think about fetch lands if I do that. Let's try 2 Searing Blaze in the main, going up a Price of Progress, and another Roiling Vortex. Now let's actually hop into the magic. Okay. I'm going to keep this hand and believe in my deck's ability to spit up 1 land over about the next 3 turns. There is a Tamiyo, which I will absolutely just Lightning Bolt rather than trying to maximize my own damage here. Tamiyo is a horrifying Magic the Gathering card. F. And this is where the interaction side comes into play. Goldfishing is one thing, but what happens when your opponent has Force of Will, Daze, Wasteland, and a Tamiyo that is protected on turn 1, flipped on turn 2? It can threaten to get back Force of Will. Stadium Headliner, notably not particularly good versus Delver, or Tamiyo rather. Tamiyo to 4 immediately. Alright. I have missed on my land drop, and I've also drawn a Searing Blaze that is not particularly great here. It can, in theory, do damage to Planeswalkers. So Goblin Guide down to 1 power here. Opponent can fetch and even Surveil to try to set things up here. Revealing another Tamiyo. That's problematic to say the least, because now opponent will have Tamiyo Planeswalker and Tamiyo creature. And life's bad with me missing land drops. I think it is very likely that I just end up losing the game here for not being able to cast my spells. Burn is in this very awkward, unique position where you intentionally want to skimp on your land counts because you need so many of your cards to just go to face and deal direct damage, that I will often be greedier with Burn than I might with other decks. And in playing against a blue-black deck, we also might see things like Orcish Bowmaster pinging our goblins and making it harder to goldfish with something like Goblin Grenade. Tamiyo to 7 already. There's a Fatal Push, and Tamiyo is going to be the clue machine. No need to leave things back here. Alright, we just got soloed by Tamiyo. That is what it is. GG. I think I'm going to board in a couple of extra removal spells for Tamiyo. I'm going to board out a couple Stadium Headliners because they are bad against Tamiyo Planeswalker Plus. I could also think about this for Force of Will type effects. I answer a Tamiyo. If I keep this, I have to get lucky off the top. I'm going to mulligan this and try to find a more balanced hand. I succeed. I'm going to keep this and think get rid of one of these. So let's do this Goblin, and then keep the way to make it more aggressive while also keeping an answer to Tamiyo at the same time. Yeah, there's the Tamiyo. So I will start with Chain Lightning on Tamiyo. Force a negation. Thanks, I hate it. We can technically answer the Tamiyo that way. I'm not sure if I win the game if I go that route. So let's try to stay aggressive. I do just chonk my opponent for 5 here. I take this outside of range of Bowmasters, which is nice. And hopefully I have some counterplay. I don't want to see like a fetch and a fatal push here that takes my creature out of play. There's a fetch. This is a sorcery, which is awkward. Do I attack this or do I just ignore? I think I attack this and hope to stick Eidolon. The threat of Barrow-goyf looming is also just a huge problem. Alright, there's an Eidolon. Alright, it's in play. Tamiyo can't minus to pick something up yet. Swamp. No immediate play. Tamiyo pluses. Land drop. No Barrow-goyf. Searing Blaze is a thing. Orcish Bowmasters is a thing. I think I am just sending both of these at Tamiyo. A Sheoldred's Edict. So I am losing one of these. Feels sort of like it's Eidolon because this is a Goblin. Or Goblin Grenade. Searing Blaze can't double target the Planeswalker, right? Yeah, I cannot double target the Planeswalker. I'm just going to pass here. This Searing Blaze being just a card that would deal 3 damage to Tamiyo would be nice. This is not an instant. That's incredibly awkward. Wasteland is fine. Tamiyo plussing is not. Alright. Now I have another one of those. Crack your clue, that's fine. Tamiyo just wastes my resources so well as a burn deck. Kaito. Horrific. Alright, Emblem is a go. I think this becomes... I can't even do that on Kaito. Hexproof. Yuck. So there's an Eidolon that is probably not actually going to accomplish anything. Don't love how Eidolon lines up versus Tamiyo. Or rather, how my entire deck lines up versus Tamiyo. Kaito smacks me around. And then opponent surveils. Saying no to Force of Will. I think I almost want my opponent to flash in an Orcish Bowmasters. So send it Tamiyo. No, that's not going to do it, right? Like, I can get Tamiyo to 7, which doesn't actually change things. So I will play a second Eidolon. Just try to make it more awkward for my opponent here. Alright, there's a Daze. So I imagine what's going to happen is that my opponent draws half of their deck and then plays a Murktide Regent or a Barrow-goyf, and I just concede to it. Fatal Push is very good. Kaito just emblems and whacks me in the face. Reasonable. Down to 9. There's an Underground Sea. Yeah, there's the Barrow-goyf that we're not realistically beating. This is surprisingly close to working, minus, you know, all the counterspells that are in my opponent's hand in terms of just doing this here. But the Goblin Grenades got stuck in our hand. The Searing Blazes got stuck in our hand. That was a one-sided beating. GG's. All right, totally on board with this hand. Very unsure which one of these 3 cards I'm going to play on turn 2. And opponent says hello. But we're always starting out like this. I am unhappy with these Searing Blazes in a vacuum. But if my opponent plays Tamiyo here, all of a sudden it's insane. It's remove Tamiyo and Lightning Bolt face at the same time. Thoughtseize is very good, one way or another. It takes something important. Could even take Searing Blaze, depending on what deck my opponent is playing. It is Monstrous Rage instead. There's a Goblin Grenade that represents a lot of damage. We squelch, I attack for 1, which then becomes 2, and then my token goes away. I guess please play a creature. That is a Moon Shadow. We'll see whether or not I can actually Searing Blaze that out of existence. Might not be able to. So there's Ward. That's on the Headliner, not on the Squelcher. So there could be Trixies. but it sure seems like I can kill a Moonshadow. So here is my attempt at doing so. Let's see if there's anything weird like Street Wraiths. There is not. I will send in for 2. Opponent to 8. I could hit them to 3, but then I don't have my next source of damage, so I think I'm just chilling here. Alright. Thoughtseize is worth a lot of life there. Well, I guess it comes with 2 life loss of its own. Maybe it's not quite as good as I was immediately giving it credit for. Opponent does take the grenade. Wasteland is not doing anything based on how I constructed my deck. I will hold that mountain. I will play a new Squelcher. And if I trade for Bowmaster, I trade for Bowmaster. Okay, that's fine. The opponent will ping my face, and we will trade cards evenly. That's okay, and I think that telegraphs that I don't have something like a removal spell here. As will always be true, we do not want to see my opponent throw down a Barrowglyph. It is a Moonshadow. A mountain is not a good draw for me. So my opponent can Wasteland themselves to grow Moonshadow. I think I'm just going to send it. Alright, we are getting the block. Alright, they are going to Wasteland themselves. This is a 2/2. We are trading. I think trading is largely favorable for me, though, because Moonshadow can easily grow outside of range of red removal. Imda Turok. I have a land. So now I just need to top deck some burn. Okay, this is why Amped Raptor is in the deck. It's for shit like this here. Nice. There's another Amped Raptor. I get the energy, but since the second one was not cast from my hand, I don't get anything else. Amped Raptor produced 4 power for 2 mana, split across 2 bodies. The first strike, relevant. My opponent's slow cantrip, probably not what they are looking for here. Alright, cool. Goblin Guide. This is, in theory, attacking for 6. I don't know that this actually kills this turn. Douthie Voidwalker, not a surprise. Oh wow, we are actually just killing this turn. Alright, Burn Deck did what Burn Deck should do, and we did kill 2 Moonshadows, which I consider a pretty big triumph. My opponent's Thoughtseizes helped me out a little bit there as well. GG. Most of my sideboard cards aren't great here. You'll probably get 2 Searing Blazes into the deck. My Eidolons are a little scary here since my opponent is also an aggro deck. I'm probably going to trim a couple of those. And then I can actually think about whether or not I would like to play Roiling Vortex, because it turns my opponent's baubles into things that hurt them for 5 and gives me something that can stop Barrowglyph lifelink. I think I'm into that over these. There are perhaps some negative synergies present within this deck that you just kind of accept. Yeah. We are the control deck this game, in all likelihood. Although that just, like, changes if I draw an aggressive 1-drop. I just have a removal spell for a Moonshadow, which feels like a huge deal. And one of my red spells ends up doing 2 damage instead of the 3 or 4 damage that I might like it to. And I just accept that. Searing Blaze. Given that draw, we go to face. 14. Wasteland is fine. Doesn't do much against my deck. Bauble cycling is fine. Opponent will go back up to 5 cards. Don't want to see those extra lands. I will Squelch, which is probably not actually going to get any life. There's a decent chance that this is just like an Edict effect here. Oh no, it's a Bowmaster's. Okay, that's fine. That gives me a Searing Blaze target, so I'm not actually upset about that. Fatal Push. So Squelcher still gets 2 life. So that's fine. Another Wasteland. Not getting a lot of value from me there. Goblin Grenade. That's not terrible. Do I kill Bowmasters or Orc Army token? Does it matter for Moonshadow? Yeah, it is permanent cards, so tokens shouldn't count there. Let's go land drop and Searing Blaze away the Bowmasters. Then I'm comfortable using a Chain Lightning on your face. Opponent at 6. Goblin Guide attack into Goblin Grenade could be lethal. Need to dodge Barrowglyph. Feel like that's going to be the story of the whole league. Alright, there's Moonshadow. Opponent can triple Wasteland themselves. Actually, no, I'm not supposed to play that land. For Hymn to Turok reasons and Searing Blaze reasons. Okay. Wasteland 1. I don't believe there's a strong reason to do this immediately. I think you can wait until your next draw step to see if you draw something like a Barrowglyph, which I'm just assuming is in my opponent's deck. So let's see if I take 4 or 5 here. All right, I take 4. Opponent passes. So there is a Goblin. I think I'm just going to play that and send the damage at face immediately and not give any sort of priority pass where my opponent could do anything to remove this and stop me from doing Goblin Grenade. Face. Opponent to 1. Any one of my 1 mana burn spells is lethal. Goblin Guide successfully getting through is lethal. Roiling Vortex single ping is lethal. Amped Raptor into one of the aforementioned spells will do it. Dark Ritual Opposition Agent. Ooh. So this is full Yu-Gi-Oh! Heart of the Cards mode, where I'm getting cracked for 7. So 7 then 14 is lethal. Wastelanding themselves. I don't know how much that matters, because you just, like, cleanly have lethal next turn. This'll do it. Hexing Squelcher. Goblin Grenade. At face. 10 damage Goblin Grenades over 2 turns. Made that. I don't want to call it an easy win because, like, we were dead on board. But I guess with just about every burn spell and every goblin, we win if we don't hit a land there, and we've already seen 4 of the lands. We're pretty likely to win in that spot. GG's. Alright, this is an awkward thing that can happen in trying to play Monstrous Rage as a burn spell. Without a creature, this doesn't go to face. This is not quite what I'm looking for, but on 6, I'm going to keep this. I really need this Goblin Guide to get in like 6 points of damage with this hand, or otherwise I need to draw something like an Amped Raptor or an Eidolon that can also represent some persistent damage over time here. In Goblin Guide, we trust. Send in. Opponent gets an Ancient Tomb. You know, I'm going to be generous. I gift you an Ancient Tomb, as we are friends. Please tap that Ancient Tomb roughly 3 times. Notably, there's a very big difference between my opponent being on like a red Stompy deck here and being on a Show and Tell deck. I'm more afraid of the Show and Tell deck that can just win the game after tapping Ancient Tomb once. Ooh, initiative stuff? I can contest the initiative. That one dies to Lightning Bolt. Ooh, yeah, like Trap being on my radar is something I can do is super fucking cool. I would really like to use 2 mana this turn. That's not how this works, though. This is just Lightning Bolt the creature and contest the initiative. Look at me. I'm the Dungeon Master now. I give my opponent a City of Traders. I thin a mountain from my deck. Now, I do fully expect my opponent to take the Undercity back. It's kind of what their deck is designed. Who knew? I'll stop talking. Finding Caves of Chaos Adventurer, which could still be castable off a Spirit Guide or a Chrome Mox here. I know they have a City of Traders from one of the triggers. That is a Cavern of Souls. No immediately castable human. So I now get to forge up my Goblin Guide, threatening Trap as well. Love this. I think I play... Amped Raptor has some misses. I wonder if it is post-combat Amped Raptor so that I can hit Goblin Grenade. I'm going to buy that. Yeah. Elvish Spirit Guide, the draw. I don't know, this represents a removal spell. I'm going to Squelch. Amped Raptor so frequently produces extra bodies. I'm going to Amped Raptor, and sometimes it is awkward. That's a Goblin Grenade. I'm willing to go face with that. Opponent to 3. If I ever take the initiative, my opponent dies to Trap. They can take the initiative back here and forge up their creature, which is fine, because I am just looking to go wide with Hexing Squelcher, and my opponent will not be able to ever remove any of my creatures due to double Hexing Squelcher triggers. Oh no, not forging. So we Squelch. And we squelch and pass the turn. The next turn, theoretically, attacking with 3 bodies is lethal for trap. We'll see what my opponent has to say about that. Also, at any point that I draw a single burn spell, including Goblin Grenade, my opponent just dies. So there's the loss of City of Traders. Slight correction to what I said. While they can't target any of my non-Hexing Squelcher creatures, they can technically target a Hexing Squelcher and go to 1. So that gives them a 3rd body. Ooh, another play. Oh, it's just Elvish Spirit Guide. Sure. Alright, going for the attack. Revealing an Ancient Tomb. First strike doesn't quite do it here. I don't think I want to drop bodies. I will just take that damage. Monstrous Rage. This is first strike and trample? That seems like lethal? So this is 5. Seasoned Dungeoneer blocks it. 1 gets through. 1 getting through. Yeah, this works. Any 1 damage getting through means that I trap my opponent. So send it. So 1 damage tramples over, which gives me the initiative trigger. Going into trap. Sending trap at your face. That lag burst means that we have won. Do we beat a turn 1 initiative creature there? Yeah. GG. Price of Progress might actually be interesting here. My opponent's mana base is kind of a mess. So I'm going to be thinking about Price and Searing Blaze here. I think similarly to what I did in other creature matchups, I board these out. And then this is 2 cuts if I want the copies of Searing Blaze. Squelcher still has reasonable text versus Chalice of the Void. I'm going to play 2 Price of Progress and just keep an aggressive number of 1 drops. Because the play pattern of play 1 drop, then remove your initiative creature is pretty nice. Although it works better when I am on the play than it does when I am on the draw. I mean, this has 1 drop creature and a removal spell. Again, I do really want the 2nd land drop while playing this deck. But I don't know that I mulligan the hands that have this much gas. Once Upon a Time reveals a Spirit Guide. This is fine. Oh no. That's bad. That's real bad. I suspect that Trinisphere solos me. Opponent to 16. There's caves or basic plains. I make my land drop. I can't play any spells yet. And I imagine my opponent goes straight down this left side. This now doesn't get lightning bolted. I think this is the you are already dead moment. Send in for 7. Failing a Simian Spirit Guide. That's whatever. I just concede if my opponent can play another creature now. I just can't come back from this deficit. Like, I literally die on their next turn. Alright, GG. Do I just hope they don't have that? Like, I can play Smash to Smithereens to answer it, but by the time I get to 3 mana, the game might already be over. I think I'm just going to run back the deck as is. So this is the same sort of awkward hand where I think I keep it and hope I draw another land, because this has the ability to kill the initial initiative creature with a lightning bolt while attacking and taking the initiative. And some portion of the time, this just does not work out. There's a Spirit Guide into a 3-ball. F. So now hopefully I rip another land. Send in for 2. Opponent to 16. If I hit the other land, like, we're potentially in business. The Spirit Guide did not hit the land. I'm not going to trade this body when I can potentially make it have trample or be a Goblin Grenade later. Wasteland. Ooh, the Lotus Petal. That's color fixing at the cost of 2 life and 3 mana. Alright, that's not great for me. I can't even do the whole exhaust thing here because I don't have mana. Ancient Tomb being tapped again for a Caves of Chaos Adventurer. This is not all that bad if I draw a land. Oh, this is a play pattern that is incredibly good for me. Now if I top deck the removal spell, I remove Caves of Chaos Adventurer and take the initiative, which is a big deal, because that would get me yet another land. Come on, deck. Nice. I'm not going to Chain Lightning in case my opponent has a Spirit Guide. That would be disastrous. So I think my opponent made a pretty big misstep, and hopefully I can capitalize on it. So that's 8. This gets me another land drop. I've already made my land drop for this turn. We'll see what my opponent can do. This Spirit Guide can become a 4/4, but I just have lethal amounts of burn, and Price of Progress can essentially do it on its own if my opponent taps their Wasteland. Okay, opponent is going down the right side instead, and is passing with a gajillion D mana up in a way that is not at all suspicious. I mean, I'll start with the obvious, attempt the attack. Oh, it just works. Shit. Fully was not expecting that. Forge up my creature. If Wasteland gets tapped, Price of Progress is just lethal. I'm also just fine holding up Lightning Bolt and then Chain Lightning. Wow, no use of mana. Another land drop. It's a basic, which absolutely just matters. That's the Wasteland tapped. My opponent is dead. Pop, baby! So that's the match win. I think my opponent made multiple mistakes that game. I think the attack in with the Spirit Guide potentially lost them the game on the spot, and then they could have given up Lotus Petal there and held up Wasteland so Price of Progress does not kill them immediately. That one might be less of a mistake because I just have this many cards in hand, and it might just be that 6 over 2 turns no matter what kills them. Regardless, GG's. Burn deck currently positive. I'm not sure how I feel about this one lander. So I have a 2-drop that can be attacking for 5 on turn 2. I have the Lightning Bolt to remove a creature. I don't know how to mulligan with this deck. The 2 land hands are unquestionably better. It answers a Tameo. Is a big deal given the other creatures in the hand. I'm going to continue to keep the 1-landers and be unhappy about it. It is a Polluted Delta matchup. The thing that I don't like about a lot of these goblins is that they line up poorly versus Orcish Bowmasters. Is a very big deal when you're on the draw, because if you try to Monstrous Rage this and your opponent has Bowmasters, they get a 2-for-1 very easily. That is honestly more realistically like a 3-for-1 because it can then trade with at least one more body after that. Veil Land from the opponent, I assume. Although not the one that I expected. This is probably a Show and Tell deck, in which case having Eidolon to put in is not the worst. It could just be like some Uro snow control, but no, I was right the first time. Okay, it is stock up rather than show and tell. We'll take that. Hitting a land drop would be cool. Ooh, immediate ponder. Getting less value off of this with my opponent doing both of those things right now. Opponent keeps their card. Goblin Guide. I'm going to assume that mana is not going to be the bottleneck and just go for it. Send in for 4. Opponent reveals a stock up. This one might not fully be out of reach. I need my opponent to not combo off this turn. And I probably hit for 7. Put an Eidolon in. Looks like combo stuff is happening. Let's turn off the yields and such. Okay, it is stock up. My opponent is in theory dead if I draw a land. 6 plus 4, 10. I think that damage is relatively theoretical. Hoo-hoo-hoo. I am absolutely into the Goblin Grenade damage right now. If I hit for 7 with Monstrous Rage, Ancient Tomb is still tappable. If all of my stuff resolves and I hit my opponent for 9, then like Ancient Tomb, Force of Will, Fetch lands are still on. We will sacrifice the Goblin Guide. Do you have a counterspell? They're gonna look for one. That's 1. Ancient Tomb not tappable. Fetch land not viable. Spell after Omniscience perhaps not viable. Here we go. Eidolon. It is a Traxa. My opponent gets a Force of Will, which doesn't matter if they... So I Lightning Bolt their face, they Force of Will and die since they are at exactly 1. This seems great. I think the burn deck is beating Show and Tell. Daze is still a thing, I suppose. Nowadays is not a thing. So, what about Force of Negation? Force of Negation would be hard castable on my opponent's turn. So, Lightning Bolt your face. Nice. Very happy to get that one there. So I took the Pyroblasts out of the deck, so we might be looking at Roiling Vortex as a way to fight back against what's going on over there. We didn't see very many cards. It is also possible that my opponent is a hybrid version that also has an Lorwyn combo with a Sararak, and there's a new green tutor. I think it's called Formidable Speaker. You can also think about Price of Progress. Searing Blaze probably comes out for Roiling Vortex. Not sure about price. I just trim one Lightning Bolt here. Knowing the matchup now, I think it's just important for me to be able to deploy the 2-drops that matter in my deck. I think I'm reluctant to keep hands that look like this one now that I know the matchup. So I'm absolutely keeping this. I think this is the odd man out. I will have to think about whether or not I want to play Squelcher on 2 or just double Goblin Guide immediately. Am I even playing this? It may just be go fast at any cost is the plan. You can look at some extra lands. Opponent fetches, prevails, no to a brainstorm. Opponent reveals another brainstorm anyway, which they will cast. Yeah, am I just casting a whole bunch of Goblin Guides? Uh-oh. Put Squelcher into play. Opponent has Omniscience. That's an Atraxa. Yeah, they do have a Lorwyn combo, and there is the Sararak. So we do actually just lose immediately to a Sararak. If you're not familiar with it, our opponent is going to infinitely loop through a dungeon and kill us. And I'm not going to make them click through it because holy shit does it suck. But they just play a Sararak, bounce a Sararak to hand, and just boom, 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 until they loop through a dungeon and kill us. It is 1 life loss for each loop through the dungeon, so it's not pleasant. Roiling Vortex and Eidolon are very good against that side of the deck, though. Alright, what does this hand do? This hand does not cast the Eidolons, I think is the answer. I'm going to mulligan this and try to find one that does. Ooh, I'll keep going. I'll go to 5. I'm going to say that this is fine for a 5-card hand. I have a bunch of persistent sources of damage, and we'll see if this is enough. My opponent is on their 7-card hand, and I may be giving them some extra lands. Show and tell is coming. And this is where not having a pile of, roughly 4 or 5 Pyroblast effects in the sideboard is meaningful. Goblin Guide, Monstrous Rage. Alright, it has resolved. I am not necessarily excited, though. Like, I am hitting for 7, but I give my opponent a whole bunch of looks at soul lands that could potentially be a game changer for them playing a show and tell immediately. Blue Elemental Blast is good here. Removing this Goblin Guide takes a lot of pressure off my opponent and gives them time to find something to pair with show and tell or the mana that they need. Like, attacking for 5 is a 2-turn clock. Ooh, are we going now? No. Well, since this can't be countered, or no, I don't have any further lands needs for Searing Blaze, but this can't be dazed or anything. So I'm going to do this, and then Goblin Guide is going to die, but it'll die pre-combat so they don't get a look at another card. Yep, that was expected. And I'll hold this in hand and give them some doubt about what I could have. Here's another land drop. Opponent to 8. But 8, unfortunately, right now is a 2-turn clock, which basically feels like forever when I know that my opponent has show and tell. Goblin Grenade could be uncounterable lethal next turn, though. Alright. They're pondering. Shuffling. Shoving with show and tell. I'll drop it into play. That's an Atraxa, which has lifelink, so obviously this is bad. Yeah, Formidable Speaker is the tutor card. So by running 4 copies of that, it is also like you are running 5 copies of a Sararak, and it can also just tutor for Atraxa or Emrakul as needed. I think I'm going to end up coming just short here. Opponent will need to discard a couple cards. Atraxa and Lorwyn. I guess I will pretend like we're playing Magic after my opponent gains 7. City of Traders. Alright, do we just have an Omniscience-based kill here now? So you play Formidable Speaker, discard literally any card, and then you turn it into Emrakul or a Sararek. Same deal. That will just win the game. GG's. Burn deck is back to neutral. Alright, I think my opening hand needs another card to be reasonable, but I'm on the draw and, have 3, 6, 11 points of burn in hand, a creature that can maybe attack, answers to Tamiyo if my opponent is playing Tamiyo. I think I'm just going to keep it and hope that it works out. Island and Ponder. Oh, Goblin Guide. Cool. That's actually incredible. And perhaps the card I would have picked to tutor to the top of my deck. It feels like, based on this timing, that my opponent has a counterspell and they're trying to decide whether or not they are willing to use it here. Spoilers, if they don't use it now, they're not going to get to use it. Goblin Guide does eventually resolve, and I'll send in for 2. Ah, fuck, it's show and tell again. We just saw how this went. Maybe I can Goldfish on turn 3. Get my opponent to 16, then to 12, then have 11 damage. Awkward. That also means that my opponent can just go next turn. So there's Squelcher, and then I'll send in for 2. Yeah, you can brainstorm. Whether or not you have an extra land is probably not the defining deal breaker in this game. Goblin Guide gets in there. Yeah, you can have your Mysterized Village back. 16. That's an Ancient Tomb. We will see if opponent has a line that wins right now. A line that wins next turn might not be good enough. They effectively have a line that wins right now, so I can hit them to 11, lose all of these permanents, and then hit them for 3. That's not going to do it. So Emrakul does get me. This is an unfortunate pairing for us. So I'm going to go Roiling Vortex in, Searing Blazes out, maybe board down 1 Chain Lightning here. I don't think the Show and Tell matchup is winnable without more Pyroblast / Red Elemental Blast effects, at which point it is probably unfavorable but bearable. I am down for this hand, so we can do Goblin on 1, Goblin on 2 with double Monstrous Rage, and Goldfish on turn 3 with Goblin Grenade in all likelihood. It's hard for us to do better than that. Basic Island from our opponent, and a cantrip. So, land drop, Goblin Guide, Monstrous Rage on one of these. I'm sure there are some fringe scenarios where it matters which one I actually select. Like a Brazen Borrower Bounce, for example. But my opponent would do it in combat anyway. I don't know that that's actually relevant. This is now 7 incoming damage on turn 2, which is kind of wild. Opponent can have an ETB tapped land, which they deploy. And I have 8 incoming damage, plus 5. Opponent is discarding 2 hand size. Blue Elemental Blast is a thing. I think that means I'm splitting Monstrous Rages between targets, and this is an instant. I guess I don't need to do that pre-combat. Yeah. Opponent gets a Misty Rainforest, no blocks. I will Monstrous Rage the other one. Alright, looks like damage is going through. Opponent is at 5. You know what deals exactly 5? Goblin Grenade. Get him. That is a Force of Will, pitching a Vesuvan Drifter. Understood. Where did that go? There it is. So that's Vesuvan Drifter in case you're not familiar with that show and tell pivot. Opponent facing lethal, but now can cast a show and tell. And they do. I'm not going to put this into play. That way if I get Emrakul annihilated, I can draw a Lightning Bolt effect. There's Omniscience. That's Emrakul. And Atraxa. Okay, fine. That is a shame. We were close to taking a game there, although I don't think we are likely to win the match. We put up 2 wins with Burn, which honestly is about what I would expect. Alrighty, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Overall thoughts on the deck list. Pretty close to something reasonable. There's definitely some Searing Blaze awkwardness on 18 lands. I think I would just run 2 1-mana spells that go to face, or maybe 1-mana spell that goes to face and 1 more land drop in these slots. I don't know quite how to make the sideboard numbers work so that you have enough stuff for everywhere. Maybe you give up on Smash to Smithereens. The artifacts that beat you aren't things like Ensnaring Bridge that you have to answer. They're things like Trinisphere that if they come down, the answer that you have might not even be good enough because you can't cast that answer. And against Ensnaring Bridge, we just rely on Goblin Grenades, Chain Lightnings, Lightning Bolts to finish things off. Opponents died quickly, or we died quickly. I think that's kind of the nature of the beast playing this deck. There weren't a lot of games where we just kind of sat around waiting for these permanents to kill my opponent. Because, like, in the games that we were doing our things, our opponents died. And in the games where our opponent cast Show and Tell, we died. Rise of Progress had a moment or two of glory, like getting 6 versus one of those decks and finishing off our opponents. Maybe you can't play Leyline of the Void. Maybe you need, like, 3 Tormod's Crypt, 2 Price of Progress, 3 Pyroblasts, or something like that. Or drop some Smash to Smithereens and try to cover some bases. Overall, I would say that I am happy with this for a burn deck. And Scott, I'll leave it up to you whether you think the thing that you're doing now is better than this more creature-heavy version. There's a Ronin card that you could also consider. I don't remember the name of it. Reinforced Ronin is something that I have seen some burn players trying out as just a, like, clearly worse Goblin Guide effect, but sometimes haste is haste is haste. I don't know that I'm overly impressed by that idea. I don't think you can play Monastery Swiftspear in the deck that looks like this with this many creatures, but this was a fun way to spend a couple of hours and a cool thought experiment, so I'm going to go ahead and call it there. If you have any thoughts about tweaking this further, or there's some card that I missed, throw them down in the comments below. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. See ya!